Welcome to Therapy Sessions Cutting Toxic Family Ties. My name is Dr. Sherry Campbell, and I'm your host. I am a leading expert in the niche of toxic family abuse, and although my show cannot substitute for therapy, it is a survivor-based show. In me, you're not only going to get an expert, but you're also going to get a survivor, as I have also survived toxic family abuse. I know how hard it is. The goal I have is to give voice to the voiceless, to provide skills to help you to protect your peace, to stand your solid ground, and to navigate and heal the heartbreaks caused by toxic family. Please have a pen and paper available to give voice to your thoughts as you listen to each show. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your bravery. So let the healing begin. Welcome back, everyone, to Therapy Sessions Cutting Toxic Family Ties. I have such a magical creature on our show today. I've been on her show. This is Dr. Z, as we all know her on social media, and she's such a superstar. And we got along so well on her show that I had to steal her to be on mine. Today, we're going to unpack the toxic father. Both Jamie and I have toxic fathers, and it's just not talked about enough, in my opinion, and how it affects little girls. And I also think it affects boys, and we'll kind of dive into all of that. But before we start, Jamie, welcome to Therapy Sessions.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to do this with you.
Yes. Tell us about you, Jamie. Tell us about your podcast, your career, who you are. Give us some
Sure. So my name's Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, Dr. Z, for those of you who follow me on social media. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I am officially based outside of Philadelphia, where I have a private practice called the Z Group, where we see adults with depression and anxiety. And I personally specialize in narcissistic abuse. So I work a lot with people all across the country, educating them on narcissistic abuse, what it is, how it manifests, what to do if you think you're in a relationship that's narcissistic abuse, that type of dynamic, or you're trying to get out of one, or you are out of one and you're experiencing post-separation abuse, or family dynamics with a narcissist. So I speak a lot about that. I have a podcast, Next Up Narcissism, where obviously we dive a lot into topics on narcissistic abuse, which you were on a couple months ago. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. I post a ton of stuff about mental health and narcissistic abuse and just kind of a lot of skills and strategies.
Yeah, I think you're the best. I think your information is so great. And it's really fun and wonderful to hook up with like-minded people, right? So,
yeah,
both of us have toxic fathers, So Jamie, tell us a little bit about what your family life was like and your toxic father, and kind of describe him to us, and we'll dive into all this stuff on how it affected you, and we'll candidly share openly about both of our dads and give people a variety of experience, because all narcissists exist on a continuum and they express their flavors a little differently. So what was your dad like?
Yeah. So, and I will say this for people that are listening, even being a psychologist and even specializing in this, you would be amazed how much we miss in our own families because, and I'll talk about this later once you have kids and what starts to happen and how you view things differently. But it's still to this day, I don't know if you experience this, it boggles my mind that there's certain things that happen. I'm like, whoa, how did I miss that? Or like, holy crap, like that's what that was, and this is what I do. I breathe this day in and day out with people. So understand that by no means just because you experience something doesn't make you an expert. And just because you're an expert doesn't mean that you are, that much better able to pick things apart in your own life. So, anyway, I grew up, pretty, I would quote whatever the hell normal is easy, but I was an only child. I had two very smart, very successful working parents. And when you're young, you don't, really know what the hell is going on. But later in life, when you have kids and you realize like, oh shit, that's what happened growing up. Oh God, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time thinking everything's normal, I did competitive tennis player. I danced. I did all the things. I was a good student. And then my parents got divorced when I was, I want to say maybe 14, 15, somewhere around there. And it was pretty bad. Again, during it, I didn't realize, but in retrospect, it was pretty bad. There was just a lot of, I would say, just neglect, not physical abuse, not necessarily, well, emotional abuse we'll get into, but just no one was home. I had the house, literally nobody was home. Back then, this was in the early 90s. Early 90s. I had no curfew. I had no one at home. So my house was the party house and it was the fun house and literally no one was there. So I would stay at friends' houses during the week. I had thankfully a boyfriend that helped me get through everything, but I would basically lived with him. I mean, that's not normal, right? But in retrospect, you think of it, oh, okay, well, I guess it's normal. But at the time it seemed totally normal. And I think a lot of the behaviors that parents engaged in that era, we'll say, in like the late 80s, early 90s, they just wouldn't get away with now. So I think that also kind of shapes this too, that I think a lot of neglect gets called out now, or then it wasn't really called out. There was no internet. There was so nothing was exposed, right? And plus you're in the shit, so you don't know that it's wrong. I just always grew up feeling, I guess the best, embarrassed or ashamed of my house and my parent, just kind of ashamed of this stuff that went on. I felt everyone else was way luckier than me. I don't mean financially or in this. I just meant from a parent standpoint. I just felt like everybody else was luckier than I was, let's say. They had family dinners, they did this stuff. And I just didn't have that. But again, I didn't know any different. So I didn't really think it was affecting me all that much. And then my junior year, I think, of high school was like really the turning point for me. I went from all honors A's to barely passing my junior year. Started hanging out with a totally different crowd. There was no parental oversight at all. My dad moved out. My mom was dating. My dad was dating. And I just kind of was there. So, I did what I wanted, what 16-year-old wouldn't. And so my grades dropped. I hung out with the wrong crowd and really just kind of went downhill. Didn't realize I was probably depressed at the time, definitely had anxiety, but again, who knew? And I think the thing that probably saved me in that situation the most was I went away to college. I went to Ohio State. I got out. I went to a big school. And I think that really kind of set me a little bit straight. Now, that being said, I don't think I realized, and I know I hear this from a lot of people who've had parents like this, I didn't realize what the hell I had gone through until I was way out of it, living on my own and seeing the world from more of an adult lens. And my mother got remarried. My father got remarried. And my father remarried somebody who, let's just say made it difficult to have a relationship with him. And for a very long time, I would think that it was her fault. I blame her. She wouldn't let him talk to me. She wouldn't let him call me unless she was there. She wouldn't let him go out with me unless he was there. And I kept making such an effort. Then I realized, I'm like, hold on a minute. And it wasn't really until I was way older that I realized this. Why the hell does he not tell her, like, this is my only kid. I want to spend time with her. Never happened. And I would get blamed for not being the good daughter. I wasn't, attentive. I was never at family events. It was very uncomfortable. And it was very, it was just, I didn't like that, well, just for now, again, I have no idea what's happening. I just know that I don't like that side of the family. I feel like, everything I do is wrong. I get called a brat. I was in grad school, so I wasn't really working. So I was taking quote advantage of my dad. I mean, all these things. And so wasn't until I'm skipping over a ton, but it wasn't until I had my first child that I realized just how fucking dysfunctional all of this was. Things that were done that I never in a million years would ever have done to my children. Emotionally and just attention wise and neglect. And I finally was able to say, like, no, if you want to see me, you tell your wife I'm going to see anyway. And everything was my fault. He was the victim, and the victim blaming was out of control. The slandering of my character was just next level. Everybody loves him. Everybody thinks he's wonderful. And I was the bad, obnoxious, bratty daughter who didn't like his wife, which wasn't, that's neither here nor there. So again, I realized that there was zero accountability. that he would never defend me. He would never stick up for me. He always played the victim until I started holding his feet to the fire. And then he got nasty.
Yeah.
Then the nastiness would come in. I'm the one that made you successful. I'm the one that put you through grad school. I still have the voicemail because I was like, I did this for you and I did that for you. And it was like, holy crap, he just really thinks he's responsible for my success. And that one line right there, I'll never forget. And this was only a couple years ago, was like,
oh my God.
Poof. And I mean, I haven't spoken to him in years and years and years and years, but these are efforts he would make to contact me. So I would get these voicemails, yelling at me or screaming at me or saying nasty things to me. I'd get letters mailed to my house that were, not once was there an apology. That's the best part, and you doubt yourself. You're like, am I being too hard? He's really trying. But the letters were very, you're missing out. You're not allowed, it's very, is just zero accountability. And you get to a point as an adult where they start to almost feel like a stranger to you. There's zero connection to them, right? And so everyone's, well, it's your dad. I get that, but I'm the daughter. I'm the only kid, mind you. And I think I held in a lot longer than I probably should have. But it's interesting when you come out of it, you hit this point, which is a point I try to get to with a lot of my patients and my clients, where your response to things that they do is one of neutrality rather than anger. So now when I get these messages or these letters, I don't get angry. I don't even pay attention to it. And it almost feels like it's somebody that I've never had a connection to. So to think that like, holy crap, like this was my dad is such a weird feeling, because you think there would be some sort of something, but there's almost like a nothing. And I think that that's the place that you strive to get to. And this wasn't overnight. I mean, I go back and forth on, I still go back and forth on constantly. What if he passes away and he's older and, and his wife died, who's taking care of it? But the truth is that, when I look back to all the things that have happened, and, I'm glossing over a ton of this, so I'm sure it doesn't sound as bad when I talk about it, but the comments and the things, when I just, all of it, there's no accountability. There's zero accountability. And it's amazing to me as a psychologist. And you look at this, and I still gaslight myself. Am I wrong? Am I overreacting? Should I just give him another chance? And every time I'd give another chance, it was always, you and my wife need to work things out. No, we don't. No, we don't. And, and so every time I hold him accountable, shit hit the fan. So that's that. And I have to be honest, I get to a place where I have such a full life now between my family and work and my friends that I don't have any room for it.
I love hearing that too, because I think being an only child, there's a lot of emotional whiplash that you take that when you're not an only child that you don't, right? I had a sibling to survive a lot of our stuff with, and I think we were pretty close as kids, but I was bad and he was good because he could not react to it. My parents were married and divorced, like 9, there's 9 between the two of them.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
And the one thing that I really appreciate that you brought up is a child cannot make a step parent like them. And one thing that I think when it comes to women is women want to come first. And I've had, I don't know, stepmother number 5. I saw how she wrote his obituary and she used my birth name, Sharon, which I've never gone by. So there's a little dig in there. But whenever he was married to someone, I knew I had to come second.
Yes.
Yes. I walked into one of his marriages. He forgot I was coming home from a field trip, and I walked in and he'd locked me out, forgot to pick me up, and they were actually getting married in my living room. And I'd been on a bus for 8 hours, and that woman especially did not want any competition.
That's what I think it was. And but again, as a kid, I don't realize that. In retrospect, I do. I mean, I just remember things like, it was his thing. He'd always call me on New Year's, but in the background, you'd hear her say, you're not calling her on New Year's. No, you're not. She has children. Like, what mother does that? He'd have to hide things from her as it pertains to me. He'd have to lie that he was going to see me for lunch. So again, it's like, as a child, I bought into it. Like, okay, we can't tell her. I don't want her to get mad. That is so dysfunctional for both of them.
It's dysfunctional because he's scapegoating you for her behavior.
Correct.
And he's making
Correct.
you have to be this adult as a child. You don't have those resources. It's not your job to fix an adult woman that he married who's genuinely jealous. I mean, the thing about women is women are more jealous creatures, I think, in many ways than men. And they get jealous of, especially a little girl. I think had you been a boy, I don't think it would be easy, but it might have been easier because there
I think it would have been different.
Wouldn't have been competition for daddy's attention. And when all of my stepmoms outside of one I hardly knew. She showed up one day. My dad was out a lot. Then he'd land and it'd be like a hurricane hit. But, I didn't really know the other woman. And there were many women in between, but I knew that whenever I was around him with the new woman of the week, that I had to be small. I had to be good. I had to be quiet. I needed to not need anything. She needed to come first. Mm-hmm. So I knew these unspoken rules were that I didn't matter. Right.
Yeah.
I think it fractures our identity. And I think it makes us not understand how are we so, I was like managing her comfort around my dad. I was constant in this management mode and I'm, my parents divorced at 4. So I'm like 4 until God knows whenever. I was always having to literally manage her mood to make sure she felt like she was the important one and that this was this requirement of me always not mattering or coming second. Right.
Yes.
And then this affects the way that you view things. It affects the way that you view yourself, most importantly, and what you deserve, what kind of love you deserve. I have an only child. So, and I unfortunately married my mother and she has been no contact with her father since she was 14, her choice. And there's a lot of whiplash. He would make her very responsible for his self-worth. And a child cannot do that. And we had to grow up in our age, right? We're similar in age. We had to make sure that we made our parents feel like good parents.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I hear a lot of financial abuse in your story.
Oh God, I had so much fun. But again, I didn't recognize that that's what it was. I had no idea. I remember, now in retro, I remember I've never talked about this out loud because I just did things that I was, but to your point, again, like I didn't know that was something that was a thing. And it just hit me a couple years ago. I remember being in grad school. I was doing my postdoc in Manhattan and it was some holiday. I don't remember what holiday it was, but I had to get home and I had to withdraw money from the ATM and they only did it, remember, in multiples of 20.
Yes.
And I remember, and it's not that we didn't have the money. So I like to say that first before I say this. I couldn't take out money for Amtrak because I had less than $20. My bank was in Philly. And so I couldn't withdraw money because I didn't have enough funds because you could only withdraw in multiples of 20. So I couldn't get home. And I was told, I don't have the money to give it to you. And at the time, and I was 30, at the time, I actually believed it. Here I am, smart, with a doctorate, independent, living in Manhattan, and I actually believed that.
But I so appreciate that.
Isn't
You're
that crazy?
No, let's talk about why.
Crazy.
But if we look at the why, if children are biologically programmed to believe their parents.
Yes.
In the normal, healthy world, it makes your children a lot safer. My daughter believes me to this day. She's 20 years old. She believes what I say. But see, I tell her the truth. I'm not out lying and manipulating.
So funny. I never, isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yes, I'm not fucking with her ability for sport. Like for him to say that and you are now made to feel guilty. And now how are you going to get home? And he's doing it for sport.
Yes. In retrospect, you think about it and I get beat myself. I'm like, how the hell did you actually think that was accurate? Right? Like how did that even, right?
Isn't there, Jamie, don't you believe that there's sort of an unspoken rule that you're also not allowed to question your parents?
Wouldn't even occur to me.
Right?
Wouldn't even have occurred to me.
That's almost worse
Yeah.
For me, my dad would be violent. So emotionally or physically. So I learned very quickly, like, I cannot question this man on anything. I just have to just let it be. There were consequences to his ego if
Yeah.
I confronted or asked. So I just,
You just don't.
right. And I
Yeah.
think that's
No.
probably what was going on for you. He'd been emotionally abusing and neglecting you, blaming you for his marital issues. What are you're going to question him on money?
I
Like,
mean, it wouldn't even occur to me. In fact, and if you did cross that line, you would lose it. So you really you don't go there, and you just learn to kind of, but I will say this, one of the things I think that ironically helps me get through that is, so I was, nobody was around. So I really was very independent at a very early age. And again, I don't think I should have had to have been that independent at that early age, especially when the
absolutely
resources were
not.
there, right? But but what I will say is that I think that resiliency, or whatever you want to call it, was also simultaneously what helps me be able to get through to the other side, ironically. So it's like what I had to compensate for actually kind of helped me.
I think it builds like a really strange skill set when
Yes.
you're alone as
Yes.
a child. And I'm very good at being alone. In fact, I'm probably better at being alone than with other people.
100%. I've always felt like I've always done things independently. Yeah, always.
Same.
I
And
agree
I
with that.
have a really hard time asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a really hard time sharing even a bad day
Yep.
because I learned how to do it all inside my own little world, right?
Correct.
And it is a superpower. It can be lonely, but
And
it
it's
isn't.
exhausting.
It's exhausting
Yeah.
and it wears on us, right? And so it's like learning another part of your identity as you become adults now. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about what you said. I want to go back to how you said, like, even today, you're still processing things. I was driving to work on Monday and I had a memory of being mocked by my stepdad. And I was trying to like him. I didn't really speak to him for 15 years. I did not like him. I did not get a good feeling about him. The way I met him was totally inappropriate. And so I didn't like him. And I genuinely would act like he wasn't there for like 15 years. So I was trying to be a good girl, a better girl. So I made him a dinner, and I'm not a cook even today. And I got mocked by my mom, my brother, the stepdad, and they thought, I mean, I was just so crushed. And this is a memory I haven't thought of ever probably since it happened. And I was watching me just deflate inside. And this is another dad in some way, because he was a dad. I later caught him having an affair on my mom. But I do feel like every male that she married or dated, and every woman my father was with, they had an effect on my identity.
Oh, sure.
When you're surviving it, you're in the now. And I'm not in that now anymore. And I've worked through all the big shit. So now these little things bubble up from the surface, and I'm like weepy on the way to work. And, so I think that you said that because I want our listeners to know, like, you're never going to be healed. You're going to be healing. It's like a verb.
It's a process. Yes. It's not a destination.
And it's not a failure. It's not a failure. Like when I hear your story, and, I have some questions about your mom too. Like, why were they both neglecting? Like, was the divorce just so consuming?
No. So actually, when you talk about the divorce, so this is one thing that popped up for me, just to give people a sense of how out of touch I was with this. And then I'll talk to you about my mom. It's actually interesting. So, and now again, I have kids. My kids go to overnight camp. So they're away for the majority of the summer. And I always went to overnight camp. And the first summer that my son went away, when we were allowed to call, then like they'd call, you can leave a message, they can call you back. And now they have these structured phone calls. So I remember my son calling, and for some reason, out of nowhere, I had this memory of my parents. I'm laughing because it's so absurd. My parents called me at camp to tell me they were getting a divorce. when
Jamie,
I
stop.
swear, I'm laughing now because it's funny, but because it's so absolutely fucking
And you
batshit
were all
crazy.
alone at
Well,
camp. Like,
camp,
girl, that's
and they called me and
terrible.
they told me they were getting divorced. And I remember like going back to my bunk and like crying, but like that was it.
Oh,
And there was no follow up. There's no nothing. And I remember thinking of my
Jamie.
son going, could you imagine calling our son and saying, we're getting divorced? And he's by himself on the phone at camp. Like, what? And I just remember sitting there, like, and it took me a really long time. I'm not going to lie, to like actually process that. Where on earth was their concern for my emotional needs in that moment?
Jamie,
I
that
wouldn't
is
want to,
like
right? I
literally
know.
so
I
heartbreaking. I am shook right now.
crazy. But in but at the time, I didn't think anything of it. And I have no idea if anyone else thought any. I have no idea.
But
But
Jamie, what other choice did you have? Like when I walked in on the wedding and my dad
yeah,
had forgot to pick me up and I'm banging on the door. Like, well, let's just start there. How do you forget your child's coming home again? Like you just forget? And now you're getting married to this person I've never seen. Right. So it's there, but I had no choice. And you were at
you
camp.
have
You
no
had
choice.
no
You
choice.
have no choice. You have
You
no
had
choice.
to just, and
Go
I
on.
don't even know what we did with it. You just go on.
You just go on.
You just go
You
on.
just go on. And it never
Wild.
even occurred to me that it was a thing
I
until my son
know.
left for camp. And I have, friends that are getting divorced and they were waiting until their kids came back. And I think that's why I was like,
Like a normal.
oh my God.
What?
Right? Like, what?
Jamie,
Like,
so you went
isn't
back
that
to your
crazy?
bunk and you like cried.
I cried. And that was it. And that was it. I think when I came back, my dad maybe had moved. My dad wouldn't move out. And then my mom was dating and it was a disaster. But I just remember thinking, oh my God, I would never say that to my kid at camp. What?
No, I mean, I remember going to 6th grade camp and I was afraid of the dark. I didn't like ghosts. You know, at camp, they scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
I already felt so vulnerable being there that let alone, but I lived like vapor in my own house. Like I lived in my room and that was my sanctuary.
Yeah.
So going away anywhere, and even to this day, like Sunday, and I know Monday's going to come, I get sick that my week's going to start. It's just like residual trauma.
I have that certain sounds, the Monday night football or Sunday night football sound that I actually have this weird reaction to that because I don't want to, it's not just like Sunday night blues. It's like, it's bigger. It's something bigger than that.
It has like bigger. Even coming home from vacation, I was just on vacation last week and I know work's coming. I'm like, and I'm like, I'm 53. What is going on? It is just this residual trauma. And the reason I think it develops is like, let's go back to camp. It's like, worst case scenarios actually happen to us growing up.
Yes.
And so when you cannot predict your environment and then you're going to start a new week, it's like that fear. And I feel like so many survivors have this fear of the bottom falling out. Like, because you know why? It fucking did all the time. You went to camp.
You know, it's interesting. I never looked at it as waiting for the bottom to fall out. I just knew there was no bottom. Like I went through life more like honestly, like I went through life knowing like if I didn't hold on tight, like that was it. So it wasn't that I was waiting for the bottom to fall out. It was like there was no foundation to begin with. This is why I was petrified to have kids. I was petrified because I'm like, I literally have no idea what a parent is supposed to be. No idea.
I can relate to what you were saying about there is no bottom through childhood, but I'm telling you, and I talked to my therapist about this, as an adult, I've created stability.
Yes.
So now I'm in the waiting, like, well, this can't last.
Yes.
This is too good for too long.
Yes.
Right. But I think like as kids,
I love that.
There was no bottom because I was living in hell, you know, and then I had all these divorces and marriages going through. And I was bizarrely expected to be like, I love everyone. I love everyone you date and I love everyone you marry. And I don't care. That doesn't work. I mean, I was feeling things all along, all alone, fucking alone, trying to process these people. And I can't imagine.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking, I never had to pretend that I liked anybody's boyfriends or girlfriend, parent.
Oh, I
had
did.
to, I never had to put on an act to be something because nobody was around.
Well, that's almost worse.
I didn't have to do anything because it didn't matter. So my mom got married very young and she was a teacher. And my mom, probably around when I was, I think it was third grade, fourth grade, kind of had this aha moment where she's like, I want to be more, do more, see more, live more. And then, you get married because that's what your job is, to get married. And either you become a school teacher or you don't work. And not that there's anything wrong with school teachers, because God bless you all, I could never do that. And she became a math teacher. She's very bright. And she wanted to do something with that. Anyway, so she went back to school for finance, like halfway through, to get her master's. And so she was caught up in that. And she works she is a workaholic. The woman will die at her desk. So she was gone, and not because she had horrible hours, but because her whole identity just shifted, very abrupt in my eyes. Maybe this was gradual and I wasn't privy to it, but very, very abrupt change in who she was.
I also think 14 is really hard because you're in identity development from 12 to 8.
Oh, yeah.
My parents were divorced when I was 4, but my mom was also a workaholic.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are parts of that part of her personality I think helped make me a hard worker, but her job was her identity, and I came far down the totem pole.
Yes, I get that. I joke with my mom. I'm like, would you, it's like the more letters I had after my last name, the better, the graduate degree. It's very much performance based. And she knows this. This isn't news. This won't be news for her to hear. But she takes a little bit more accountability. And I have a little bit more understanding for her because her upbringing was pretty brutal. Yeah. And so I have a little bit more understanding for why she is the way she is. And she takes more accountability, but I also had to stop expecting her to be the type of mom that I wanted, let's say. And so there's only certain things that I know that I can tell her. There's only certain things I can trust her with. And there's only certain things that, I'll go to her for help on. And I had to fill in those gaps with my friends. And so my friendships with people, I have a lot of friends, but I have very few extremely close friends. And my close friends, are the people that I depend on to get through life. I don't depend on my parents. And I never did.
No, and we weren't allowed to, honestly, Jamie. I want to talk about accountability, and that even a mustard seed of it does so much healing.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yes. When you talked about accountability, I was thinking, my mom would rather die and go to her grave than ever utter any type of accountability to be able to see me and my daughter ever again. Right. The more accolades that went after my name, the more my mom hated me.
Oh, see, mine was the opposite.
Mine was the more successful I became, the more she hated me.
Yeah.
And I feel like when there's a lot of marriage and divorce, maybe I'll have you on again so we can talk about step families, because I haven't even unpacked step family pain
that's
yet.
That's a whole other
there.
Yeah.
And there's bads. I've experienced bads on both sides. Stepdads, then you have multiple siblings that you have to adapt to. Yeah. The parents are not caring at all about how this is going on, but that your mom was able to take even a mustard seed of accountability allows a pathway to her that's limited, but it allows at least some type of a connection. And I love that you said that you fill in the rest, right? I call it our family.
Yes. And I love that. Yes.
Our family. Like I have my boyfriend and his 2 kids, and I've got my daughter, and I've got my closest friend, and I love my animals to death, and I've got my animals. And I would even say that my patients have a significant part in my life.
Absolutely.
I don't just treat them. I love them all. Yeah. I admire all of them. And they fill up a nice relationship role where I'm safe in that because there's boundaries. But I do feel like when you grow up the way that we do, is that some of the superpowers are how you learn to fill things in. Yeah. How do you think that your dad affected choices in boyfriends and choices in partners, or how did that affect you?
I think that it made me gravitate towards people who didn't, I don't want to say who didn't require a lot, but I think I ended up gravitating towards people who didn't emote a lot, I
Yeah.
guess, because I was
Emotionally
so,
unavailable.
yeah, I was so used to that. So it seemed normal. And I'm so used to being emotionally independent and just independent in so many other ways that I didn't look for it as something that I needed because I thought I already had it almost. And, we gravitate towards what's familiar, even if it's unhealthy for us. So I also felt like the more I had to, um, like win somebody over maybe or fight for somebody to
Earn.
to win to earn them almost. So I think that was definitely in the mix for a long time that I was going to win them over, that I was going to not fix them, but just maybe change their outlook on relationship. I was going to be the one that was going to change that. And I think it definitely made me accept a lot more emotional disconnect than I probably should have. I guess just because it was familiar,
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
When you were dating, if a man was too nice to you, what would happen?
It, when I was younger or now when I was
You were
younger,
dating, just like you were dating some guys. Because for me, I loved the emotionally unavailable men. And when a man was really nice to me,
it probably annoyed me.
I couldn't like him.
I think it annoyed me.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, I think I looked at it as a weakness instead of a strength.
I did too. I think in our identities, we looked at that distant, disconnected, angry as well. Angry, disconnected man as a man. That's what made him a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when someone would be really nice to me, it would actually like gross me out.
Yeah.
And I couldn't receive. And, maybe some of those men truly too were needy and not well themselves, but
Yeah.
it took me a really long time. I would say that the person I'm with now is probably the most close to very balanced that I
Yeah.
dated.
And balance can be boring for people, especially people coming out of very toxic relationships. Stability can look boring. And I even remember when I got engaged, I remember having this conversation with one of my best friends. I was like, I can't believe I'm engaged. This doesn't happen to me. This happens to other people. And I remember saying to her, I'm definitely going to oh my God, this sounds so bad. I'm definitely going to get hit by a car. Something bad's going to happen to me before the wedding. Cause
right.
I don't
Bottom falling out.
People don't, yeah, people, right. People everyone else gets married. I don't get married. This doesn't happen to me. I'm not lucky enough, worthy enough, whatever it was. And I remember having that conversation. I remember at my wedding thinking in my head, holy shit, nothing happened. I didn't get hit by a car. I didn't get struck by lightning. I'm actually here. And I remember having that thought at my wedding and thinking,
what's crazy is that you thought that too as a little girl, when you were talking earlier in the episode that, just good things didn't happen to you. Everybody else had this and everybody else had that. And yep. I think that's so relatable to us raised in toxic families because the reality is that good things didn't happen. I was in high school and I saw this girl laughing, head back, laughing. And it was so genuine. And I was like, I don't have that.
Yeah, I understand that. I get that. I felt that way too.
I wish I cannot even relate.
Yeah.
To whatever she's feeling like. I was raised in the upside down. I wasn't raised in the right side up.
To this day, even when you have my friends that know me from growing up, and you ask them about my house, the first thing they will all say is there was no food. There was always cat food. Because we had a cat. There was no food, but Jamie always had cat food. And they're right. They're right. And so again, I didn't realize how bad that was until I had kids. So in the beginning, when I would be the one to go food shopping, and when I tell you, if we had one thing of detergent or one thing of shampoo, it made me anxious. What if we run out? So I would buy
Stockpile.
4 bottles of shampoo, 5 things of detergent, because what if we run out? Because in my house, there was none. And again, it wasn't because it was thankfully, it wasn't because it was a financial issue. Financially, we were more than fine.
It was a
It was
neglect
a
issue.
neglect. It was neglect. And so finally, my husband was like, Jamie, we have 10 of these. We don't need any more. And he took over the food shopping because, and I haven't food, it's just not one of my roles
Jamie,
now.
it's like it made you feel safe. I have little OCD.
Oh my God, yes. That's why I don't like
little
stain things, because no one would wash it to get it out. Like, it's
Yes.
crazy stuff.
I have little OCD traits that I think that what happened is I couldn't control my world. So I started controlling things.
Absolutely.
And I'm a little bit of a stockpiler myself.
Yep.
We also had money, but with so much change and so many men and women in and out of my life was changing drastically every 3 years to be a new life. And
did you expect it to happen? Like, did you know that it was temporary more than likely?
I never attached. I stayed in my room all the time. Like when I first met these 4 step siblings I was going to have, I just stayed in my room. And then when they would come for the weekends, I would leave and go stay the night at my boyfriend's house. I never wanted to be around them. And I also never liked having attention. Most of the attention I got was negative. And so I figured I'll just not, because I was failing, Jamie. I almost failed 3 grades. They neglected me, so I neglected me. I mean, I think that's what happened your junior year. It's like you were being so neglected. You kind of are like, well, if they don't give a shit about me, I don't give a shit about me.
That's exactly what happened.
Right? Yep. And then like you, once I went to college and I got out, I started getting better, but I really didn't know how toxic things were, even with all of the marriages and divorces, until I had my daughter. And then I was like,
no one did anything. If my kid had straight A's and was in honors classes, and then all of a sudden, junior year was failing, I would be so on him and so do everything I can to support him. But when it was me, what was interesting was I was criticized. Yes. I was told, you better snap out of it. You're not going to get into college. I was punished, emotionally, whatever, punished for it, shamed, instead of, they sent me to a psychologist, but it was because something was wrong with me. And
me too.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating now. In retrospect,
sending me to therapy was the worst mistake they made.
The worst.
Because this woman saw me. And I forever have such a place in my heart for her. She saw me. And she said,
I just wouldn't go. Wouldn't go.
I went, first session, it was like Goodwill Hunting. I said not a word to her because my mom tricked her. Right? It was like through her work.
Yeah.
There's those programs. She ended up genuinely saving my life. I started getting good grades again at some point. I went to college. She treated me 3 years into college.
Yeah.
Adapting to change. I was so masterful at it as a child because I had no choice, but then I became afraid of change as an adult. It shifted.
Interesting.
At some point I just needed shit to slow the fuck down so that I breathe, right? Yeah. But I would say that my dad really did fracture my identity in many ways. My dad was in cults and some weird beliefs.
Oh, wow.
He would tell me I was his sexual partner in other lifetimes and that he would choose me over as my mom. So that's why she hates me, because she's still jealous. And I'm like 15, right?
That's awful.
I can't tell up from down. And he's such a narcissist. My dad was raised in hell. I mean, I do have compassion that my dad was raised in hell. Horrible alcoholism and domestic violence. He just never got it together. Yep. But he definitely made me feel like I wasn't pretty. I wasn't lovable. I was not important. And then that was in my identity for such a long time. Yeah. And when he passed away, his whole death was manipulated against me. But I chose everything in my body was like, he has had decades to own stuff and apologize. Death doesn't change people, and he never chose to change.
Yep.
So my body was like, do not go. his last words to me were very violent and threatening toward me. And I just thought, he's calling upon my need for my dad at the 1 yard line.
Yes.
He cannot have to meet his maker. And I'm not his maker. No. And I never knew what I was going to do when he would die. And
yeah, I mean, I still don't need, Jamie, I don't think you'll know.
There's no right or wrong way.
No.
But my thought was, if he genuinely wanted to take any accountability, he was a real letter writer. He'd write you mean letters and shit. Send them to the house. You get a mean letter telling me I'm passive aggressive, telling me I'm at college, haven't spoken to the man in 5 years. So of course you do. And I just thought, if he really felt something for me, he will have written it down. Nothing. So I feel very solid now. And I didn't, how am I going to live with this? Am I bad?
Yes.
You know what? He was a human being. He was so screwed up. They slapped a label of dad on him. It didn't make him love me. It didn't make me safe around him. He was physically violent. He bloodied my face. I never felt safe. And I did not want to go and see some man that suddenly loved me because he was going to die.
Yes, I understand that.
That didn't feel right.
I get that.
Authentic, right?
And that's a hard thing to do. And I mean, that's something I struggle with too. I mean, I have, talk about flying monkeys. I have had people, his relatives contact me, his new girlfriend's contacting me, and I got a voice. I just read the transcript of it. It was like, as a psychologist, you should understand. I'm like, what? Don't know.
Really? I got one too.
Yeah, like, as a psychologist, you should. I'm like, what?
Yep. The stepmom he married in my living room is the one who called me as if we'd never lost touch. It was this was me. I'm like, did I treat her? Because
I mean, I know that to that side of the family, I'm viewed as this, snotty, obnoxious daughter who didn't like his wife, which is, again,
she didn't like you. There was no shot for you to like her if she didn't like you.
And I knew that. And so that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is because you're stuck. You're like, oh, I want to call this woman. So I have this total stranger leave me a message telling me it's my dad's new girlfriend. It's your father. You should talk to him. He wants to see his grandkid. And I'm reading this going, this poor woman has no idea the whole other side of this. And she just knows what he's telling her. Part of me was like, it really bothers me that she doesn't know.
No,
and it really bothers me that like it's being put on me to be the big quote, bigger person. And she actually said to me, I couldn't believe this. I've never heard, I don't even know who this woman is. I don't want to be the person that has to call you to tell you that your father's passed away. I'm like, what? What? You don't want, like, who are you? And so that's a constant for me.
Yeah.
Constant. I don't like getting the mail because I know what the letters look like. I know the writing, and I'll have Facebook messages come to me. Everybody thinks he's amazing. He's wonderful. And listen, to the outside world, I get it. He was a very loved doctor. People adore him. They think he's great. And not all
know, like narcissists have
that.
Narcissists have two personalities. I had a narcissistic mother and a narcissistic father. And I would say they both have very two different personalities.
Oh, yeah.
Charming, social, perfect person.
Yeah.
And then we have the home devil.
Yeah.
And as survivors, because so much of what we were abused with can't be seen with the naked eye, then the parent is inherently believed over the child.
And I got to tell you, for people listening on this, one of the things, and again, this is just, how this guilt can kind of eat you up. When I had my son and also I have 3 kids, I remember thinking like, I don't want my kids to ever ask me, why didn't you let us meet our grandfather? It took me a really long time. He wasn't at my wedding. He wrote this nasty letter to my in-laws. It was just like so ridiculous. I allowed him to see my 2 kids, not my third, but my 2. They had been born already. And so we'd meet at a public place and there was like a little playground, and that happens maybe once every few months. And then I remember one time my daughter dropped something. I don't remember where we were. And she told me that he yelled at her. And I was like, we're done. That was it. And he doesn't know why I stopped that. He doesn't, and it doesn't even matter why. It's just, for some reason, seeing that happen and hearing that happen was enough for me to be like, no, I'm not even going there. And to somebody else who's listening, thinking, well, whatever, he just yelled it. it's not the just yelling. The response is disproportionate. I know what that yelling can turn into. I don't want to deal.
Toxic fathers and mothers too, but they really sweat the small stuff, the imperfections like spilled milk. Why is there a saying, don't cry over spilled milk? How do you think that got started?
Yeah.
Because some parent annihilated their child for spilling the milk. My mom yelled at my daughter once.
Do you know what I used to think that meant, actually? Yeah. I used to think it meant when you were breastfeeding, because it was like liquid gold, that if you spilled the milk, like if I spilled the breast milk, I would be like devastated for like a whole day.
Oh my God.
I thought that meant.
Yeah, it's like if a kid makes a mistake, like you're at an Italian restaurant.
Yes,
red sauce on the white.
Yes,
the white
yes.
thing,
Oh,
you're
God.
yelling. It's like walking on eggshells, and I think that when you saw that, and when I saw my mom yell at my daughter, I was like, it just transported me in some portal back to all my, my mom points, she pointed in my daughter's face. My daughter's 2. She had a hose. You got wet. Oh my God, enjoy it.
I know.
They can't. And I think I had the same type of awakening, Jamie. And I'm so glad you shared that, because when you see that happening, it not only is totally disproportionate, and your child shouldn't be yelled at for something like that, because those things don't matter in life, but it also sends you down the portal to all the trauma and pain that you went through. And you're like, oh, we're not doing this to another.
We're not doing that. No.
We're not
even there's certain things even today where it can't hurt me anymore, but he'll try. I've been told, one of the lines he would say always growing up, and it sounds like you probably got something similar to this, was, do you, and I'd be like 7 years old, do you like what you see when you look in the mirror? That was one of the things that I got all the time, as if I was like a bad person. But again, I didn't realize how messed up that comment is to make to a child.
That is directed at your core and your identity.
And for something but he said it again in a message, as a grown adult. And I'm like, God, that's all he's got. He's still using that line. That's how you know you're healing. When you hear that and you're like, oh, really? Like, we're still with that line.
You know what I would get? I'd get, you better shape up. And I get
that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know what I did that was wrong to begin with most of the time. I think it fundamentally made you and I better parents. And what's sad is that,
for sure. But I didn't think I would be. I didn't. No. And if you ask me, I still have a part of me that thinks that I'm a shitty parent. There's still a part of me. And I think there always is going to be. And people say like, oh, you're such a good mom. And my initial response is, I am, right? Like, and this is like as a grown woman.
I know, because I still think it goes back to identity, right? Like, we had no model for a good parent.
No.
So we're kind of winging it.
Yep.
Right. And there's no guarantee in parenting, and every child has a different temperament. And I don't know. I find that part of you sort of charming, honestly, Jamie, because it's so innocent and it's still so vulnerable to feedback, or vulnerable to, like, you're still looking at yourself and still looking in these holes. Like, why don't I have any identity here? Like, into the hole, like, where's that identity piece?
Yeah, it's true.
I think that's so good for the listeners to hear, because you and I are both PhDs. We're both very educated. We're both still looking in our holes, people. Like,
oh yeah,
we are still healing and questioning ourselves. And I want to end on this, because I think that one of the most important things for me in my life, the purpose that I sort of got out of having such an abusive dad, and you too, and hearing your story, is that neglect is so huge. And if you neglect, identity becomes probably the hardest thing to develop. But what it does is, like, I think the whole purpose of being here is self-reflection. And I can tell you, your dad has not spent one fucking minute in self-reflection.
No. Oh, no. I know that. Yeah.
1 ounce of a minute in self-reflection, he would be different. And this is what makes survivors different than our abusers. Is my mom once said to me, after she ruined one of my birthdays of many that she ruined, but you have no idea how many days I spend in self-loathing. This was on my birthday. And I was like, well, I don't know why you're doing that. Why don't you spend time in self-reflection? She says, I can't say anything right to you.
Right. There you go.
So, okay, go loathe away in your victim mode and do the things.
Yep.
My dad felt perpetually sorry for himself. And somehow everyone was against him and nothing was going well for him. When I was given the job of being his emotional janitor and slave and everything else. But I think that self-reflection is, and knowing for our listeners that it is forever. You have two very educated women here in this field working directly with narcissism.
Yes.
We are still growing. We are still self-reflecting, right? And we are still looking. To me, it's the most passionate part of my life. And I can feel it in you. Like we just have such a great chemistry with one another. And I never knew all this about your story. And there's so much more I want to know, but I do feel like, what would you say that the greatest thing that's a positive that you've taken from this relationship with your father? Not because of him, but in
Yeah,
spite.
no, I would say that, I think it just, like I had said this before, that it made me have to be able to like really take care of myself, emotionally take care of myself, and to be able to figure out how to do it in a way that moves me forward instead of keeping me stuck. I think that it was almost as if I wasn't going to let this dysfunction stop me. I've always had that in me. I don't know if it's something I was born with or it was part of being an only child. I'm not sure if it would have been different if I had a sibling, but all of it taught me was that I will be damned if I'm going to sit there and allow it to not move me ahead. Like I am going to get as far away emotionally, cognitively, like even in my career, like just everything, how I parent, it's in everything I do. And it's not perfectionism because Lord knows I fuck up all the time. I mean, all the
Right.
time. It's not about perfection. It's just, I'm going to do this without you because
I
you
look
gave
at
me
it
no
as,
choice.
that's right. It's a resource, right?
Yeah.
Like I look at my overachiever in me
Because
and
there's nothing to depend on. So it's like, I'm just going to do it.
yeah. And when you're given no choice, well, you do or die, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And
I guess it is a choice.
I
I
mean,
could have
it
ended
is
up
a
very different.
choice and it is do or die. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine how many people have actually taken their lives because of toxic family. And I do think it's a
Yeah.
resource. And what I want what our listeners to know is what you had in childhood gives you the opposite direction that you can take that opposite direction that is good
Yes.
and positive and love. And you
Yes.
choose love instead of control. You choose connection instead of control, right? You choose authenticity over attachment. You choose to do that path. And I love how you stated that because you have to be your own best resource. So to someone who's
Yes.
listening who feels like, oh my God, that sounds so overwhelming, what would you say to them?
That just because it's overwhelming doesn't mean that you can't do it. And the things that move you in the right direction towards the things that you value are always going to feel heavier because it's unfamiliar and it's scarier and it's uncomfortable. So, anything that keeps you safe within a toxic dynamic is just keeping you in the shit. So, it's more about moving forward at an insultingly small pace, I like to say.
Yeah.
Because you do, as much as we say we didn't have a choice, we did have a choice. And sometimes I really, and I'll have my friends who've known me for years say, like, I can't believe you're where you're at. And sometimes like I can't either, but it's a choice you make, even though we say we have no choice. It is a choice. But I think if it feels heavy and uncomfortable, it's because because it's not an easy task. Nothing about this is easy. And the thing I think that gets easier as you go on is all these little things that you do along the way. I don't like to look at them as goals. I just like to look at them as just evidence that you're able to do this, even if it's difficult. It's like, don't let the difficulty stop you. Do it, and at the same time, be uncomfortable. But just because you were raised a certain way does not mean that you need to repeat that. And this is something that we preach all the time to our patients.
Wow.
But that's not an easy road. That's why you have to take it so unbelievably small. So you build that self-efficacy. Like, look, oh, I can do this. Rather than trying to bite off something larger than you can, because chances are you're going to be doing it without a support network. I mean, for a long time, you don't have a support network until you do.
That's right. And I think that's the perfect message to end the show on, because I can't even believe this has been over an hour.
I know.
I love it.
I
But
just noticed the time. I was like, oh my
I
God.
think you have so much to offer, and I'm so grateful that you came on the show. I do want to have you on again because I have
No, I love to.
I've not done a step family show, and I really want to start diving into just healing my life in that area because those people had an indelible effect on me. But to end with what you just said is so powerful. I was running the other day on my Peloton tread, and Jess Sims said, "Forward is a pace."
Yes.
You said insultingly, what did you say?
Insultingly small steps.
My thought, and I thought about forward is a pace. Just as long as you're going toward connection, as long as you're going toward self-reflection, as long as you're going toward love, then you are going the right way.
And what I tell people too is, if you have trouble, because a lot of times people have difficulty. If I say move towards things you value, they don't know what it is that they value. So before you even do any of this, figure out what it is that you value. If you value eating healthy, if you value being social, pick apart, what does that look like for you? Maybe being social for you means texting somebody back. Maybe for me, it means going on a vacation. Figure out what those behaviors are, and not to take like the romantic aspect out of this, but take that behavior, break it down into a million little steps, and then just take one of those and start there. Because as long as it's under the umbrella of love or self-reflection, you're moving in the right direction.
That's right. And
that's how you have to do it.
Breaking it down is sort of like a neurolinguistic programming, is where you chunk things down into manageable parts. And little wins are what give us the confidence, right, to get those bigger wins. So I just want to say to my listeners how lucky they are that we got to have you on the show, and we will have you back. And I love all my brave hearts. That's my little community that I have. And until next time, be well and take care of you. Well, brave hearts, that concludes our amazing therapy session for the day. Please sign up on my email list at drsherrycampbell.com so that you can be in touch with me and see what's going on in terms of what I'm offering soon, what books are coming out, etc. Talk to you in a couple of weeks.